Hi class, today we're going to talk about chapter 17, Babylon Takes Over Again from the Story of the World. In this video, we're going to review chapter 17, talk about the Old Babylonian period, Middle Babylonian period, Babylon during the Neo-Assyrian Empire, the Neo-Babylonian Empire, and Babylon today. So we're going to start with your chapter 17 review. So in chapter 17.1, Nebuchadnezzar's Madness, you learned about Assyria's fall. So after Ashurbanipal dies, Babylon takes over their land. Assyria had taken Babylon prior to this, so Babylon really wanted revenge, and they destroy Nineveh, including the library of Ashurbanipal. For a while, Babylon would be the most powerful empire in the world. Nebuchadnezzar becomes king around 605 BC, and he spends a lot of his time making Babylon beautiful. However, he ends up going mad, and it says that it was because he became too prideful. He loses his mind and becomes like an animal, and this story is recorded in the Bible. In chapter 17.2, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, Persia, you learn about Persia, which is a country to the east of Babylon, and it's becoming strong and expanding. They make an alliance with Nebuchadnezzar because he did not want to fight the king of Persia, and he marries the king's daughter Midas as an alliance. He just falls in love with her, but she really misses home. So he creates the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. It is considered one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, and it's built by Nebuchadnezzar to make Midas happy. Some of the characteristics of the Hanging Gardens are that it had an artificial mountain with paths, an artificial river with water pumped from the Euphrates, and it had trees, flowers, and bushes, some of them native to Midas's home. So we're going to start with the Old Babylonian period. So like Assyria, Babylonian history is divided into 3 sections, Old, Middle, and New. And Old is all reviewed. So here we go. The Old Babylonian period is when we have the Assyrian Empire and the Babylonian Empire. The Shamshi-Adad builds the Assyrian Empire. He dies, and Hammurabi conquers Assyria. He takes over all of Mesopotamia from 1792 to 1750, and Babylon grows to be the largest city in the world. And this is where you have the code of Hammurabi, and he makes all of these laws to govern all the peoples he has conquered. However, after his death, his empire falls apart, and his descendants continue to lose territory as Babylon weakens. So that's it. That's the Old Babylonian period. Moving on to the Middle Babylonian period. We've already actually studied a lot of this too. So the Hittites, who you remember battled Ramses II in the Battle of Kadesh, the Hittites conquer Babylon in 1595 BC. The king of the Hittites just conquer Babylon because he wants to prove that he's powerful, that he's the king of the world, but it's too far south to take it over. So basically, it's just like someone who's like, I want to show you how strong I am. Hey, I'm gonna go like destroy that thing, but it's too far away. I don't really actually, want it or want to do anything with it. I just wanted to beat it up to show you that I was strong. So that's basically what he does, and this leaves a power vacuum. So the Kassites are wandering nomads, and they settle in Babylon, and there's a map here of Babylon during the time of the Kassites. They rule for about 400 years. Assyria, however, emerges as a world power in the 1300s. This is the middle kingdom of Assyria as well. So we're in Middle Babylon, Middle Assyria. They take Babylon's throne in 1225 BC, but the Kassites are able to get rid of the king and take it back for a while. However, the Kassites' rule ends when the Elamites come. I know we only talk about the Elamites when they just come and like destroy other cultures, but sorry, that's how it is right now. But the Kassites' rule ends when the Elamites sack Babylon in 1160 BC. Now, the Elamites steal the Babylonian gods, including Marduk, pictured here, which is Babylon's chief god. Now, the Babylonians believe that the statues themselves were the gods' bodies on earth. So when the statues physically left, they believed that the gods had left them. So a strong Babylonian king named Nebuchadnezzar I would come to the throne. He's one of few strong kings. They aren't very many, but he invades Elam and he sacks Susa, which is the capital of Elam, and he's able to take the statues back, bring the gods home, and there's this brief Babylonian revival. However, this revival ends very quickly. The Assyrians sack Babylon, then we have the Aramaeans from the Bronze Age collapse, the Chaldean tribes from the south come and they just settle in Babylon. So basically what you need to know about this time period is that Babylon wasn't able to emerge as a strong power and the Assyrians dominated the world. So you have Old Babylon, you're like, woohoo, Hammurabi, one strong king. And then you have Middle Babylon, woohoo, you have Nebuchadnezzar I, another strong king. But it's ruled for most of the time by others, or even when they are ruling themselves, they're really, really weak. That brings us to Babylon during the Neo-Assyrian Empire. And I want to tell you a story about an old man who would not give up. So we're going to talk about a lot of Assyrian kings, but I want you to focus on the story of an old man who wouldn't give up, okay? So let's review for a second, the Neo-Assyrian Empire. So we learned about the Neo-Assyrian Empire. You can see a map here. They basically conquered like everything. But it's from 934 to 609 BC. The capital is Nineveh. Like we learned about in the last video, they destroyed the northern, sorry for the typo, they destroyed the northern country of Israel and they took the 10 tribes captive. They also conquered Egypt. They're known for cruel and ruthless kings. They're known for their crazy military tactics like siege towers and battering rams. And you read about Ashurbanipal and his, he was also a terrible king, but he also built a library. So that's your review. Moving on to Tiglath-Pileser III. We studied him when we studied Israel as well. Now, I'm going to go through these kings as I tell you this story about this old man who wouldn't give up. But at the top of this video, I have a list of kings for you. They are in order. And I just have that so you can kind of get a visual of like the kings that we're going through so you can keep them kind of straight in your head. You don't have to memorize them, but it's there as an aid to help you. Anyway, an Assyrian king named Shalmaneser IV had lost control over Babylon. So they form an alliance. In Babylon, a strong king named Nabonassar comes to the throne. In Assyria, Tiglath-Pileser III comes to the throne. And both kings are like, yeah, let's just make an alliance. However, we know that Tiglath-Pileser III was clearly more powerful because the conquered chiefs of different tribes paid tribute to Tiglath-Pileser, not to Nabonassar in Babylon. So when Nabonassar dies, Babylon just falls into civil war because they don't have anyone powerful to take over. So when Babylon is all fighting each other, Tiglath-Pileser III in 728 BC marches into Babylon and he declares himself the king. He swears an allegiance to the Babylonian god Marduk, and I think this must have made the Babylonians happy because Tiglath-Pileser III is the first Assyrian king to be recognized in the Babylonian king list. Up to this time, when an Assyrian would rule the Babylonians, they would not acknowledge them to be their king, but Babylonians actually acknowledged Tiglath-Pileser to be their king. So a tribal chief named Merodach-Baladan comes and pays Tiglath-Pileser III tribute. However, he begins plotting revenge. So Merodach-Baladan is a Chaldean chief. The Chaldeans were to the south of Babylon. So he waits for Tiglath-Pileser III to die. And then he waits for the next king to die. So you can see up here, Tiglath-Pileser dies. Shalmaneser V dies. And as soon as he dies, he gathers this secret alliance and army that he has been forming. He marches to Babylon and he declares himself king. He says, the gods have told me that I'm supposed to be king. So he does this. The next Assyrian king right here, Sargon, whoops, I'm supposed to circle that, not cross it out. Sargon II comes and sacks Babylon. Merodach-Baladan runs and hides. And Sargon II, as Merodach-Baladan eventually comes out of hiding, Sargon II eventually allows him to live as a vassal chief. That was a mistake on his part. So then Sargon II dies. So we have Tiglath-Pileser die, Shalmaneser V die, then we have Sargon II die, and his son Sennacherib comes to the throne. We talked about Sennacherib in our Israel video too. So immediately when Sennacherib comes to the throne, there's a transition in power, and anytime that happens, the Babylonians just try to revolt. They hate being under Assyrian rule. So immediately the son of a Babylonian official takes the throne. And his reign only lasts 1 month because Marduk-Baladan comes out of hiding and he comes and seizes the throne again. Susan Wise Bauer says this was the last straw. Sennacherib himself came sweeping down like the wrath of Assur and broke through the allied front line, barely pausing. Marduk-Baladan ran from the battlefield and crept into the marshes of the Sealand, which he knew well, to hide himself. Sennacherib marched the rest of the way to Babylon, which prudently opened its gates as soon as it saw the Assyrian king on the horizon. Sennacherib came through the open gate, but chose to send Babylon a message. He ransacked the city, took almost 250,000 captives, and destroyed the fields and groves of anyone who had joined the alliance against him. You understand why now later Babylon will destroy Nineveh. He also spent almost a week hunting through the marshes for Marduk-Baladan himself, but the aged fox had gone to ground and could not be found. After Sennacherib's run-in with Hezekiah in Judah, we talked about the 185,000 being killed by the angel. After this, he goes to see how things are doing in Babylon. Susan Wise Bauer says, he found, much to his frustration, that Marduk-Baladan was once again busily attempting to put together an invasion force to take the throne back. At Sennacherib's approach, Marduk-Baladan ran to the Sealand, but this time Assyrian soldiers fanned through the march, searching for the old man. With his hiding places in danger of discovery, Marduk-Baladan collected his allies and made for the waters to sail for Elam. This did not give Sennacherib the satisfaction of striking Marduk-Baladan's head off, but at least he had driven the man temporarily off the scene. Marduk-Baladan would end up dying from old age. So I just want you to look at this list up here. He started paying tribute with Tiglath-Pileser III, waited till Shalmaneser died, took the throne, then Sargon runs him off, and then when he dies, comes and takes the throne again, and then Sennacherib comes and just like obliterates the city, okay, just destroys the city. Then Sennacherib leaves, and when he's coming back again, he tries to take it again, like this old man doesn't give up. And I just thought, he's such a little known figure in history, but man, what a fascinating story. So I just had to tell you that. Okay, moving on. So Sennacherib is eventually assassinated by 2 of his sons, like we learned about last time. Esarhaddon takes the throne, and he's very different from his father because one of his first degrees is to rebuild the entire city of Babylon. So he does this. Ashurbanipal then rules after Esarhaddon, and when he dies, Babylon, the Medes, the Persians, they unite and they fight the Assyrians for years until finally Assyria falls in 612 BC. Joshua J. Mark from the Ancient History Encyclopedia says, in 612 BCE, Nineveh was sacked and burned by a coalition of Babylonians, Persians, Medes, and Scythians, among others. The destruction of the palace brought the flaming walls down on the library of Ashurbanipal, and although it was far from the intention, I just think this is so fascinating, it preserved the great library and the history of the Assyrians by baking hard and burying the clay tablet books. Krawatschek writes, thus did Assyria's enemies ultimately fail to achieve their aim when they raised Assur and Nineveh in 612 BCE, only 15 years after Ashurbanipal's death, the wiping out of Assyria's place in history. So instead of wiping them out, they actually preserved it by burning it down. Still, the destruction of the great Assyrian cities was so complete that within 2 generations of the empire's fall, no one knew where the cities had been. Like, that is total destruction right there. The ruins of Nineveh were covered by the sands and lay buried for the next 2,000 years. So that is how completely Babylon and these other countries wiped out Assyria, which leads us to the Neo-Babylonian Empire. So for the first time in 1,000 years, Babylon became the strongest nation in the world. The Hittites and the Mitanni are gone. Assyria had been destroyed and taken by Babylon, and Egypt is incredibly weak. Babylon is on top of the world, okay? The only possible threat could be the Medes, Persians to the east, and this is when Nebuchadnezzar II makes the alliance to marry Amytis. Nebuchadnezzar II is crowned king. He's the son of Nabopolassar, who's the one who defeated the Assyrians, and he reigns from 605 to 562 BC. So here's a map of the Neo-Babylonian Empire. You can see that is very large and expansive. And here are pictures of the ruins of Babylon. So in the last video, we talked about how Assyria destroys the northern kingdom of Israel. So now we're going to talk about how Babylon destroys the southern kingdom of Judah. So after Nebuchadnezzar becomes king, he heads to Judah. And in 2 Kings, it says for 3 years, Jehoiakim, who's the king of Judah, becomes a vassal of Nebuchadnezzar. Josephus, who's a famous historian, says the king of Babylon passed over the Euphrates and took all of Syria, except for Judea, and Jehoiakim, affrighted at his threatening, bought his peace with money. So basically, Jehoiakim pays Nebuchadnezzar off. He's a vassal, but he is not destroyed. Jehoiakim dies in 597 BC, and as soon as this happens, Nebuchadnezzar heads to Jerusalem. The king Jehoiachin surrenders and is taken into captivity for the rest of his life. Nebuchadnezzar, I guess, was like, okay, sure, that's fine, and Jerusalem is not destroyed at this point. Zedekiah is then placed as a vassal king in Jerusalem under Nebuchadnezzar's rule. Zedekiah is not smart in that he secretly tells Psammetichus II, the pharaoh of Egypt, that if he is going to attack Babylon, that they, Jerusalem, would help Egypt. The result is that Egypt comes up to try to defeat the Babylonians, and Nebuchadnezzar completely defeats the Egyptians, and so the Egyptians have to go back home. And so Nebuchadnezzar then is just like, okay, Zedekiah basically betrayed me, and he goes to Judah. He defeats cities on his way, and he gets to Jerusalem, and he lays a siege on Jerusalem for 2 years. Everyone is starving. Zedekiah and the army at this point are like, we've had enough, and they try to escape. And when they do that, they are caught by Nebuchadnezzar's army. Then Nebuchadnezzar executes all the chief officials, all of Zedekiah's household. Jerusalem is burned to the ground. The palaces, the temple, the houses are all burned. The city walls are destroyed, and the people are then taken into exile into Babylon. Susan Wise Bauer says that it was the beginning of a diaspora which lasted for 2 millennia. And this was God's punishment on Judah for being unfaithful to him. Okay, so he does that. Some of his other accomplishments are that after he defeats Judah and he consolidates his empire, I showed you that map of how big Babylon was, he focuses on many building projects. He renovates and refurbishes cities. He builds the Hanging Gardens of Babylon and the Ishtar Gate. Joshua J. Mark from the Ancient History Encyclopedia says, by 600 BCE, Babylon was so impressive, it was considered the center of the world, certainly by the Babylonians themselves and seemingly by others. A clay tablet dating to this time, discovered in the ruins of the city of Sippar, north of Babylon, and presently in the British Museum, presents the ancient world revolving around Babylon. So let's talk about the Ishtar Gate. So, first, there was this processional way, which was a road 70 feet wide, which Nebuchadnezzar built. It's a really wide road. And he built it for the festival of Marduk. Remember, Marduk is their chief god. So the statue during the festival was taken from the temple and it's paraded around the city. And the processional way, the road runs to the Ishtar Gate. Here's a model of it. Now, the Ishtar Gate was built dedicated to the goddess Ishtar, and it's 50 feet high. It's decorated in these gold pictures of lions, dragons, bulls, and flowers. He uses lapis lazuli for the blue bricks, as you can see in this picture. And Joshua J. Marks gives a description by Nebuchadnezzar of his own gate, which says, of bricks with blue stone on which wonderful bulls and dragons were depicted. I covered their roofs by laying majestic cedar lengthwise over them. I hung doors of cedar adorned with bronze at all the gate openings. I placed wild bulls and ferocious dragons in the gateways, and thus adorned them with luxurious splendor, that people might gaze on them in wonder. And again, that's Nebuchadnezzar's description. So the Ishtar Gate was discovered and excavated between 1902 and 1914. 45 feet of the original gate remained, and it was then all of that was taken and reconstructed in Berlin. I'll show you some pictures in a second, but if you want to see a virtual tour of it, go to the link here. I'll link it in the description below. The link has like a lot of different monuments that they have in this museum, and you have to get to like the middle of it to actually see the Ishtar Gate. Anyway, here is a picture of it reconstructed. Now onto the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. So again, the Hanging Gardens, as you read, was built by Nebuchadnezzar II for his wife Midas, who just really missed the mountains. And they are considered one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. However, it's the only disputed wonder out of the 7. And some scholars believe that the gardens in Nineveh were the Hanging Gardens actually, and were built by Sennacherib and not Nebuchadnezzar. So it's like this whole thing. Mark Cartwright says, archaeology at Babylon itself and ancient Babylonian texts are silent on the matter. But ancient writers describe the gardens as if they were at Nebuchadnezzar's capital and still in existence in Hellenistic times. The exotic nature of the gardens compared to the more familiar Greek items on the list and the mysteries surrounding their location and disappearance have made the Hanging Gardens of Babylon the most captivating of all the 7 wonders. So here we have all of these descriptions of these gardens, yet we don't have any archaeological evidence of them, which is a mystery. Here's a picture that somebody made, and they think it might have looked something like this. Okay, so I would just want to say a quick word on Nebuchadnezzar's Madness. So Susan Wise Bauer gives this analysis, which I just think is brilliant and wanted to share with all of you. And she says Nebuchadnezzar's Madness is the reversal of the Gilgamesh epic. So just think about that. The reversal of the Gilgamesh epic, in which the wild man Enkidu looks human but roams through the fields eating grass like an animal. In the Gilgamesh epic, Enkidu is the tyrannical, uncivilized, power-grasping shadow side of the king, one who must be wrestled with and tamed before kingship can prosper. In the tale of Gilgamesh and Enkidu, a man becomes a good king, and his shadow side, Enkidu, more human when he resists the temptation to exercise his power without restraint. But Nebuchadnezzar goes the other way, increasingly autocratic and sinking from great king to animal existence. And so that ancient Sumerian unease with kingship is resurrected in the tale of Nebuchadnezzar's Madness. Nebuchadnezzar, too, is conquered by the beast within him. Daniel, born into a nation which has chosen its kings against the will of its own God centuries before, provides a theological commentary to wrap the story up. Men are frightened by kingship because every man desires power, and desiring is ruined by it. So I just think that is such a fascinating analysis and connection to Gilgamesh and even Sumer. So where is Babylon today? So Babylon today is located in southern Iraq, and much of the city was restored by Saddam Hussein, who had this whole restoration project, and he built on top of the ruins, and many archaeologists were outraged because of this. However, much of the city was then destroyed by the US invasion in 2003. They even built like helicopter landing pads over the ruins. There was a museum for Nebuchadnezzar, and it was looted, and it's since then closed. The city now, like the ancient city of Babylon, now is open to the public if you guys ever want to go visit it. However, it's unprotected. There's no fence surrounding the city. There's a lot of looting that happens, and there's artifacts thousands of years old, like clay pottery pieces and even coins, and you can find them in the dirt. So I'm going to link an article below that's called Visiting the Ancient City of Babylon, and it just has a lot of great pictures, and so check that out if you want to. So to just wrap up this video, Susan Wise Bauer says, despite the place it occupied in the imaginations of its neighbors, Babylon was the center of an empire for a very brief time. Hammurabi had been its first great king, the first Nebuchadnezzar its second, and Nebuchadnezzar II was only its third great king and its last. So that is all I have for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.